What if I told you that your refusal to sell out is the reason you are poor? No, not the version of you that experiments with more accessible content and pulls back. Not the version that has tried and compromised. I'm not talking about someone who tested the waters and chose to return to deeper ground. I'm talking about the version of you that has never fully tried. The one who decided, before the work was ever truly offered, that the market was beneath them. Using words like integrity and purity, you think you're protecting something sacred. But what if all of it exists for one reason, so you never have to find out what your work is worth? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most psychologically ruthless thinkers in Western history, had a name for this. He called it ressentiment, a festering, self-sealing psychological operation in which the person who cannot compete invents a moral framework in which competing is beneath them. And here's what makes it so difficult to see. It feels exactly like integrity from the inside. This is about the specific psychological machinery that keeps gifted people enslaved to poverty while convincing them it's a choice they're proud of. It's brutal, it's precise, and if any part of you suspects it might be about you, it is. So let me ask you one more time. What if your principles are just your fear with better vocabulary? Let's begin. You already know the story you tell yourself. The market rewards mediocrity. Algorithms flatten everything into noise. The people who make money from creative work have quietly abandoned something essential. You see it in their eyes, in the slickness of their output. You are not those people. You still care about the thing itself. You've probably tried the alternative, made something more accessible, and when it didn't feel right, when it felt like a betrayal, you used that feeling as confirmation. See, I knew this wasn't me. But the truth is more disturbing. The real problem is not the algorithm. It is that I refuse to sell out has become a defense mechanism. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect you from the one experience you cannot survive, being fully seen and rejected anyway. Nietzsche saw this. Ressentiment is not simple bitterness. It's a structural inversion that occurs when someone who cannot achieve refuses to admit the inability. So they don't say, I failed to compete. They say, I chose not to. They don't say, I'm afraid of being evaluated. They say, I have standards. And over time, this inversion hardens into identity. The inability becomes the virtue. The weakness becomes the proof of depth. Do you feel the precision of that? Nietzsche wasn't describing a character flaw. He was describing a survival mechanism so elegant you cannot see it. Every time someone achieves commercial success, the mechanism activates. You begin building the case for why it doesn't count. They compromised. But what you're actually doing is what Epictetus called reacting to a false impression, accepting an automatic judgment as though it were reality. Epictetus wrote, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." The thing that is disturbing you is not other people's success. It is your opinion of what their success means about you. The narrative is self-sealing. Success in others gets explained away. Struggle in yourself gets reframed as nobility. It is a closed loop. But you already know this. There's a specific sensation, not quite guilt, not quite grief, that shows up in the quiet moments. When the screen is dark and the story has run out of momentum, when you're left with the question, what if I'm not protecting the work? What if I'm just hiding it? And here's where it gets darker. Because the story doesn't just live in your head, it lives in your community. The mythology of the struggling artist runs deep. Van Gogh dying in poverty. You absorbed this story. It gave suffering legitimacy. The real reason is that this mythology arrived at exactly the right moment, when you needed a story that could absorb a wound without requiring change. Think about the first time your creative work failed to land the way you needed it to. Not a dramatic rejection necessarily, maybe just silence. You put something into the world, something that cost you, and the world continued without noticing. In that moment, your mind faced a choice it wasn't equipped to make. Is the work inadequate, or is the audience inadequate? For a developing identity, especially a sensitive one, the second answer is infinitely less threatening. And so the template was set, quietly, automatically. Now take that template and multiply it across years of creative effort. Every time the work doesn't land, the template activates. Every time someone else's work does land, the template explains it away. And slowly, the defensive move becomes the worldview. You didn't choose to believe the market is beneath you. You arrived at that belief the way a river arrives at the sea, through the accumulated pressure of 100 smaller choices, each one reasonable, each one self-protective, none of them examined. And this is the part Nietzsche understood that most people never articulate, you found your community. Think about the creative circles you've inhabited, the conversations that feel most like home, the shared contempt for people who sell out. These conversations feel like solidarity, but what they are, functionally, is a mutual protection agreement. You validate each other's narratives. You collectively maintain the story that financial struggle is a sign of artistic seriousness, and commercial success is a sign of compromise. Do you see it now? That specific unease when someone in your circle breaks through, starts gaining real traction and making money. The way the energy shifts, the questions about whether they've changed, the subtle withdrawal. That's not concern, that's ressentiment protecting the architecture. If one person succeeds without compromising, the entire story becomes questionable. So the story defends itself. Nietzsche wrote, "The slave revolt in morality begins when ressentiment itself becomes creative and gives birth to values. The person who cannot compete builds a new game, one where they win by default. Their inability is reframed as superiority. And the most disturbing part? This is why you are exhausted. Maintaining a value system built entirely on negation requires constant energy. Every success story you encounter must be processed through the filter. Every artistically serious yet successful person must be quietly discredited." Epictetus, a man born a slave who achieved inner freedom, would say, "The person who refuses to engage the market has made it the center." You are not free of it. You are organized around it. Real freedom is the ability to engage fully without your identity depending on results. But if you think the diagnosis is dark, wait until you understand what the actual path out requires. It is not what you're hoping for. The problem is not that you lack strategy. The problem is that you are running a psychological operation to ensure you never fully commit. You will get close enough to real exposure to prove you tried, and then retreat with new evidence that the market doesn't deserve you. The real solution is what Nietzsche called the transvaluation of values, willingness to ask, where did these values come from, and are they mine? The first act is genealogical honesty. Trace your most cherished belief about integrity backward, personally. When did you first hold this belief? Most discover their principles were formed at their most vulnerable moments, adopted through pain. That makes them unexamined. Inheritance, not integrity. Separate what is genuinely within your control from what you use as an excuse. The quality of the work, yours. The market's response, not yours. Calling it a principle does not change what it is. The decision to withhold your work is entirely within your sphere of choice. The third act is redefining what finishing means. A creator whose work reaches no one has not finished the creative act. This is the hardest reframe, because it requires you to accept that the work's completion includes its impact, not just its making. Nietzsche's will to power, Wille zur Macht, is not about domination. It is about self-overcoming in service of what you are here to create. The surgeon who operates brilliantly in an empty room has not practiced medicine. You have been practicing in an empty room and calling it dedication. But I need to be honest about what this process actually costs. It is not uncomfortable in an abstract way. It is uncomfortable in the specific way of losing people. When you stop performing noble poverty, the community will experience it as betrayal. Some will say you've changed. Some will say you sold out. And you now know what that means. Their ressentiment is protecting itself. Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." The chaos is the actual destabilization of an identity you have organized your life around. It is the only path to genuine strength. When you walk through the transvaluation of your values, the first thing you notice is not power. The first thing you notice is how quiet it gets. The operation was loud. The constant processing of other people's success through your filter was consuming you. Now you're not asking, does this compromise me? You're asking, does this serve the work? One protects identity, the other completes a mission. When someone breaks through commercially, you feel no defense. You've spent years experiencing their success as a threat. Now it no longer is. People will notice the shift. They'll say you've sold out. But you understand that the discomfort you cause is evidence of a psychological exit. You stopped treating the gap between your work and its potential audience as a badge to be worn. The people who needed it begin to find it. This is what Nietzsche called the noble stance, values built on affirmation rather than negation. I am building, I am creating. Is my refusal to fully engage born from strength or from the terror of finding out what I'm actually worth? Nietzsche understood that the capacity to sit with a genuinely uncomfortable mirror is the beginning of noble value creation. Now do something that matters more than you think. Write in the comments, I choose the arena. When you name what you are choosing in public, you are making the choice real. The will moves first. The identity catches up. And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. The ones who call your shift a sellout cannot hear what you are hearing. That is not your problem to solve. The next video asks a harder question: how to know whether what you're protecting is actually worth protecting. You've already begun. The question is, will you continue?